Alright, so this video might be the longest of all of them, but we've got static content showing, whoop, I turned the server off. So we've got static content showing at localhost 4000, as we can see here. We want to make dynamic content. So the first thing that needs to happen with dynamic content is we need to be able to send data back to the server. So let's make that happen. So we'll go to our router and we will post to, let's just call it update, to controller, and we'll make an update function. So this, so if you notice in the HTML or the template rather, there was already some forms that I put in here. I said in the very first video that I did change the HTML and CSS. I figured that y'all didn't want to see that so much, but we put some forms in here. Texas will hijack these forms and do stuff over WebSockets, so that's something to take note of, but as a developer you really don't need to know that. It'll just work, hopefully. This is an alpha library, so things do tend to break. So yeah, it's going to the update for both of these things, and it's using the post method for both of them. We'll pattern match to get different kind of operations going later, but they're all three going to the update action, so that's useful to know when we go to our to-do controller. And we set up an update that has con and params. Typing fail. And yeah, so inside of here, we do a Texas redirect. And Texas functions are really just thin wrappers around Phoenix stuff. And the reason we do that is because this connection might be a plug connection, or it might be a socket that comes in. And so if it's a socket, we need to do different things than if it's a plug connection. And the reason it could be a socket is because we also direct our form functions coming down a WebSocket as well as going over HTTP to these same functions. So take a connection here, and then I think we just do this. I think that's all we have to do. I could be wrong there. So that'll redirect us to the home page after we do the updating. So now we need to update state here, right? Let's set up a persistence layer. This is not very Texas-y stuff we're about to do, but it is necessary to kind of show off all the features of Texas. So let's get rid of this window, get rid of this window, keep that around, might be useful to look at. And let's go to our application. Application. And you'll see that we've got these text. Oh, that's Texas application. That's not what I wanted. Application. I wanted our YouTube app application. Cool. So we've got an endpoint as our only child right now. Let's set up an agent, and I believe the way to do that is to actually, I'm going to go look at the other application because I forget the syntax for this. So go to example app, lib, it's inside the working on docs, application, and we've got these two agents that we're starting up. And there's different ways to start up, or different syntax you can start stuff up in your child spec. This is one of the ways to do it. So we've got let's call this our to-do list. And the ID actually doesn't matter. What does matter is that we change this, because the name is how you is how we're going to get at the process later. So there's the to-do list, and then the to-do list state. And we're initializing the to-do list as an empty list, and the initial state will be all. And again, this ID doesn't really matter. What does matter is this to-do list state right here. So this is going to start up two agents for us whenever we restart the server. So those agents will be started up, and they'll be holding our state for this. So update state. And for the purposes of this tutorial, it might be a little bit easier to follow if I just stay inside this file. This is probably not good programming practice to define these functions here, but here we are. So this will take params. We'll pattern match here in a little bit, but for now we'll just put that kind of holder in place. And so we want to update some state whenever we're gonna. The first thing we'll do is we'll allow people to put a new to-do item in the list. So that's gonna happen in this form, right? Where's the form that happens at? This is posting update. This is toggle all. This is the new to do, as you can tell. So the name and the name and then the value inside the input is what's going to be passed over the wire here. So kind of the key that we're going to be matching on here is this map that's got a key with new to do, and we'll call this item. So we'll pattern match, and whenever it hits this, we will then agent update the agent with, and I forget the syntax for it, but I do know that it's the to-do list is the process we're keeping this agent at. And I believe the syntax is we're passing a function that'll just pop it into that list. So we've got an empty list as our state right now. We want to replace that with the current contents of that list with which is the cons operator will put the current contents of that list in front. I guess we want that behind. So then we'll put this item at the front of this list, and then cons the rest of the list into this list, and that will update it with this final list. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, there's plenty of tutorials on agents. So yeah, I think that's all we really need to do here. So that should allow us to update our state. Now to show our updated state in a static way, let's go to our view. So our to-do view handles our dynamic content. I said static, and what I meant by static is that we're not going to broadcast these updates out in update our clients in real time, but this will take our state on initial page load and render it out. So the way we're going to do that is, let's just initially just kind of keep it simple. Let's get our list here. In our list, we're going to do agent.get, and it's inside to-do list, and we'll just pull out whatever is in state. That'll be our list. So let's just put the list here. See what actually happens when we do this. I'm not entirely sure. So first we need to put something in that list, and we can do that hopefully by hitting this form. Let's go restart our server and see if this works. So we got our form right here. Should be able to hit enter, and that will put something into that'll post something back to our server, which our server is then updating that agent state. So when I hit refresh, I should see something, and I do. I see that test. So I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, and I hit enter after all those, posting those back to our server, which our server knows how to update the agent state. So when I refresh, got 4, 3, 2, 1 test. Cool. So all that data got persisted, and we're showing that list. However, doesn't look like what we expected. Inside of the to-do MVC, they gave us some HTML, and I kind of broke that out of the template, so I don't think y'all wanted to watch me pull out HTML. But basically what I did, we can go look at it actually, that's probably not a bad idea. Inside this HTML, so we've got this unordered list right here. So I knew that these things right here were going to be dynamic, and we were going to be generating each of these lists. So basically what I did, and maybe what I'll do right here actually, is I'll just take this list right here, and I know that that's the structure of the list that I want. And this, I can go back to my view, and instead of this div string right here, let's just do this. And put this stuff back over. Cool, so this is going to be our list, a list item, I should say. And this is going to be the HTML that we want rendered for a list item. So this is a decent bit of HTML. So let's just go down here and kind of get this out of the way. And list item HTML. And let's kind of break this away from us for right now. And let's wrap that in a string. Whoop, that broke all of the... Actually... Oh, I think that was right, actually. Good enough. Okay, so this is going to be dynamic, so we need to bring a list item in here. We'll just call that an item. And this will return our HTML with all the dynamic parts put in it. So in the spirit of doing view first kind of stuff, we just kind of yanked to that HTML because we knew that that was going to be a dynamic part. And we're going to render that inside of our unordered list, which we will copy and paste, because essentially what this function is going to do is just be replacing this Texas identifier. So we'll look for Texas, and we get this unordered list right here. Let's just yank that out and put that inside the string. And what we want to replace it with dynamically is the to-do list HTML. So to-do list HTML, how we're going to build that is we've got our soon-to-be dynamic list item HTML down here. And let's just enumerate over this list. So enum dot, and we'll reduce it into a single string. So we'll reduce all of this into a single string, so it could be multiple list items, right? So we want to kind of concatenate all of those list items together. We'll do that by reducing it into a string. And tell you what, we'll just do this right here. Put that down here, or right here. My typing is off today. We'll pipe that into this. So our final product is going to be the to-do list HTML. We're going to age.get the to-do list. We're going to pipe that into reduce. The second argument of reduce will be the empty string. That will be our accumulator or our initial state. And then we're going to put a function in here that basically just says, hey, here's the accumulator as argument number 2. We want to concatenate that in front of argument number 1, which argument number 1 is just the item that's coming from the list. What we actually want to do is we want to pass that item to the function down here, the list item HTML. That's going to return a string for us, concatenate it to the rest of our lists that have already been built, and ultimately give us this to-do list HTML. So fairly concise. Hopefully the logic's not too messy if you're familiar with reductions and whatnot. Yeah, so what is this item that's coming back? Initially, it was just a string, but we need to figure out all the dynamic parts inside this list item HTML, right? So class is completed. Well, it's not always going to be completed, so that's obviously something that needs to be dynamic. Let's give this variable right here. Class view is probably static, and that's probably not going to change. Class toggle, that's probably just some styling. Type checkbox, checked. So whether or not it's checked or not is probably going to be dynamic, right? Label, that's going to be dynamic, so let's get the item.label here. And I wish my syntax highlighting was working for this, but it's not. But we're interpolating this item that's coming in as an argument. We're going to figure out if it's completed by checking some attribute on this item. And since we've got all these different attributes, to me, it makes sense for this item to be a map. We can put it in any data structure we want, but if we're putting in a map, then I can like put a key in there called label, and then use this incantation right here in order to get the value out that will actually be the label. That's static, class edit, value create, input class edit, value create a to-do MVC template. So what is this value? Okay, so this is for the edit. I don't think that I'm actually doing anything with that yet. So we don't really need that, I don't think. Let's keep it there. Let's see what the... Because I don't think this value is actually showing up for us, so it's not doing anything right now. We might do something for it later, but this input's probably hidden, right? Yeah, that might be all the dynamic stuff that we need to put in here. We just need to say class is completed if item dot what do we call it? We call it to-do list. We call it to-do list state. So we'll just call it state equals done. Then do completed. Otherwise it'll be nil, and that should get rendered out to an empty string, I guess. I'm not sure what the alternative was. Let's actually look at that. So there's completed, and this other one was just didn't have the class at all. Interesting. Okay, so if it doesn't have the class at all, so that should be fine if it's just nil there. And also we need to get checked. So let's see, checked or not checked. So if that's nil, that should be fine. It might. All right, so I'm gonna guess this is the same thing. So if item dot state equals done, do, probably need a comma there, checked. That should work. We'll find out, I guess. Cool. And let's see. Now, the way we've been saving our items is not a map. We've just been saving that text we've been putting in. So let's go back to our controller, and we're update state params. And this item that's coming in, it's giving us all the data that we actually need. We've got the label text, but let's just create a map with it. Oh, I didn't realize I had two windows open. Let's create a map with that. So item equals, and we know that we want the label to have the string that we're typing in the text box. We'll give it an ID so that we can target it later for things like deletion and whatnot. And for now, let's just give it an ID of, let's see, what would be the easiest? UUID is a library that's a Texas dependency. It is a dependency of Texas, so I know I have access to it. UUID 4, I believe, is the function I'm looking for. Hopefully that was right. And also state. So let's put the initial state as active, I guess. And whoops. And that'll be our map. This will represent an item in our agent. So we're just gonna have a list of maps, and we'll, inside our view, we will grab all that list of maps. We will enumerate over them, and we will pass each of those maps to list item HTML. List item HTML takes the item, and it's checking properties on it in order to build out this string right here, right? So finally, we stick those lists that have been rendered out inside of this unordered list, which will replace our template right here. And in order for that to happen, of course, we have to parse it. That's just something that Texas needs for now anyways. That is very likely to change in the future to give a cleaner API. So let's see where we're at actually. Restart the server. Go to localhost 4000. We'll enter test, refresh, and okay, well, it's definitely got some of the syntax. What's happening here? I expected there to be. Okay, so we do have the toggle type checkbox. It's not showing. I lost one of the classes around it, I think. Toggle type checkbox checked. Oh, because it's type checkbox. I pulled straight from here. Remember me saying in the install video that I changed some of the HTML. So let's just go back over here and pull out the actual HTML we needed. I forgot that I had done some changes to it, so we'll see what the differences are here. Because I don't need a checkbox, I need a button, because I need to be able to submit data back to the server whenever I click that. The checkbox is client side only. Web, let's go to our view, go to our to-do view, and where are those lists that we're building up? So this is all the stuff that's being built up right here. This is the actual HTML we needed. And oh, it looks like I did stuff very similarly. Awesome. Cool, so we'll just kind of drop that in place. Delete all this stuff and go over it one more time. So completed was the variable we used here. We got item. We put an ID in there so we can target it later. So we made this into a button. We named it so that we could pass it back in a form request. We gave it a value, which is item ID. That makes sense, so we can tell our backend which one we're actually toggling. Strip tags is no longer, so this is just kind of some HTML entity sanitization. Since this is just a tutorial, I'll take that out because it's an extra dependency I don't feel like installing. But Texas by default is not like EX where it's like sanitizing for you. That'll probably change in the future, but for right now, there's no real sanitization. You have to kind of do it yourself. So we know the item label right here is user input. So if user input is being rendered directly, then user input could be valid JavaScript. And if that's rendered directly, then that could compromise your application, right? So we're not going to sanitize here, but do keep in mind that that's something you might need. Of course, the forums are going to post to update. The name here is to-do mark. Let's call it to-do toggle. I like that better. And you saw the X when you hover over it. This allows us to delete. So to-do delete will be the name here, and then the values are going to be the IDs, which will let the backend know, hey, which to-do item am I trying to delete, or which to-do item am I trying to toggle. So that should be everything we need right there. Let's recompile. Cool. Yeah, you see we got the little circle that shows us where we can click, the X. We can type stuff, 1, 2, 3, 4, refresh, and they're all different list items. Cool, so that's some more static stuff, and it's real easy to make this dynamic real time all of a sudden. So this is, everything we've done so far should be pretty equivalent to anything you're gonna do as far as rendering HTML, whether it's backend or client side. This is all gonna be familiar code that you have to write in some framework somewhere. This isn't really Texas code, and I realize it is probably much different working inside the view as opposed to just plugging EEX inside the templating engine. But I think this is a clean separation. It does give us some benefits that are maybe not immediately obvious, that allow for optimizations and whatnot in the Texas library. I think this is a cleaner separation regardless, even if it didn't give us optimizations. I mean, you can look at our template and see all of our static content here, which I think is really nice, and not be like bothered with all the dynamic stuff. If you want the dynamic stuff, just look for Texas and see, okay, these elements are going to be dynamic, and then you can go to your view and see what is all the logic that is rendering out. So this is a true logicless template, right? I know other frameworks claim to have logicless templates, but then they'll have little off and on switches and stuff like that. This is a true logicless template. It's pure HTML, which I think is really clean, really nice. There's some benefits there that I won't go into for this tutorial. Okay, so we've kind of done the back-end rendering and legwork to persist state and whatnot. Now comes the actual Texas part, that whenever we get done updating the state, we probably want to notify state changes. And we don't actually have to call anything. We're not going to be super efficient here. We're just going to say notify state changes And again, you probably wouldn't put this in your controller in a real library or a real application, but just for the sake of this tutorial, I'm doing it to keep all the code kind of concise, so we can look at it really easily together. And I always forget the syntax, but you'll remember when we installed it, we configured Texas to know where the endpoint was. That's because the endpoint gives us access to PubSub. And thinking about it now, I'm not sure that that's relevant to this point I'm making right now, but do know that we're about to broadcast out a message, and that message will let clients know to update themselves, and that's all we have to do. So everything we've been doing so far is pretty much equivalent to what you're going to have to do in any HTML rendering framework, right? Front end, back end, doesn't matter. You're going to have to do code very similar to what we just did. And then the only thing you have to add on top of that to make everything work for Texas is this, I know I'll put it in the controller here as well, is this broadcasted message. And that to me is really cool. So let's broadcast out this message. And I need to wrap this up in a cleaner API. So my apologies for this being such a young library that it just isn't very clean. So we're going to broadcast this message out. This is what the message looks like. The important part is this property right here. The to-do list is going to tell all the clients to update their to-do list, right? So let's restart the server. I don't think we even needed to restart the server there. Probably not. We'll refresh here, and to show you that it's going out to all the well, that's not what I wanted. Let's go to localhost here, and to show you that it's going out to everybody, we'll do it on 2 different browsers, you know. So yay, Texas made us real-time updates with a single broadcasted message. So yeah, hopefully this kind of proves the point that Texas has a very small API. Everything else is just back-end HTML rendering, it's HTML rendering that you're going to have to do. It doesn't matter if you're on the server or the client. Really, in order to get all this transport stuff in place, all we had to do is broadcast out a message. And that's due to all the internals that Texas gives you for free. So this is going to be the end of this segment. For the next segment, I'll finish out this application, and it's not going to be much different than what we've just done, but it might be interesting, or you might want to watch me do the rest of it just to kind of get the flow down, like maybe feel more comfortable with what I'm doing. But this is the end of this video, and we'll pick up and finish the rest of the to-do after the next one.